Whoa, 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 whoa. I know what you want to do. You are not allowed to comment until you watch this entire video. Please do not comment until you watch this entire video. That is a 2004 Land Rover Discovery 2. Today we're going to find out, is it cool or is it just crap? So the reason I don't want you guys to comment right away and tell me how awful it is and how you bought one in 2004 and had 14 new engines and 13,000 miles and how it's just the worst car in the world and it's going to explode the second you look at it is because yes, a lot of that's true, but there's also a lot of really cool stuff on these old Land Rovers that you may not know about, which is why I think they may be cool and also crap. So let's start with the bad stuff, and well, we might as well just start with this paperweight that's under this hood here. Okay, so what we're looking at here is a 4.6 liter V8. It was the only engine available here in the United States. It develops about 217 horsepower, 300 pound-feet of torque, at least when it was new. Now this engine is actually kind of interesting. It's all aluminum, so aluminum head, aluminum block, and it's got a really cool history. You see, this is the very last series-produced version of the Rover V8. Now if you don't know what that is, the Rover V8 was a lot like the small block Chevy of the UK. They used it in everything from MGs to Triumphs to Morgans. It was just all across the board, but it actually started life as a Buick V8 back in the early 60s. Now this engine can be found in all sorts of displacements ranging from a 3.5 to a 3.9 to a 4 liter, a 4.2, this 4.6, even some slightly weirder ones, and it was produced for a lot of years, granted with some different iterations. Now what makes this engine so particularly bad in this 04 Land Rover are really three, we'll call them catastrophic problems. First off, we have to talk about the head gasket, because that's what these things are known for. Head gaskets on these old Land Rovers will go about every 50 to 70,000 miles when they were new. And I don't mean some of them will go, I mean they had a failure rate of 100%. I've talked to 2 Land Rover mechanics and experts before making this video, and these are some of the big issues we found with these trucks. So the head gaskets will always go, they're expensive to repair if you go through a shop. These engines also had problems with heat management, so a lot of them overheated, and we need to talk about the construction. Aluminum head and an aluminum block, which is cool, kind of sophisticated, pretty lightweight stuff, but what it means is they have a steel cylinder liner. Over time, especially when they get hot, they start to slip, and then it's just a nightmare. The whole engine needs to be gone through once those slip, and it's just over for the engine. Other issues, certain model years had an oil pump problem, which led to a catastrophic failure and meant that the engine received no oil pressure, and that of course caused it to blow. There's a lot of race car guys out in the UK that really do a lot of re-engineering to these things and make serious horsepower. A company called Bowler, which does these extreme off-road Land Rover and Range Rovers, they used a 5 liter version of this that was just incredible. But out of the box in the Land Rover Discovery 2, be it the early 4 liter or this later 4.6, it was just garbage.
Do you love going off-road? Do you love power sports? You know, motorcycles, dirt bikes, ATVs, side-by-sides, even jet skis? Well, at TFL, we love off-roading so much that we've started a brand new YouTube channel called TFL Off-Road. That's anything that goes off-road that's not a car or a truck. And you can visit that channel right now by clicking on the link in the description below and checking out an entire new world of TFL off-road reviews.
Okay, so the engine is kind of a boat anchor, but what about the transmission? Well, the transmission here in the United States was actually pretty good. It was a ZF-derived 4-speed unit, automatic, you know, nothing really special, but pretty durable, pretty reliable. Now, next up on the drivetrain though is the drive shafts. Drive shafts in these Land Rover Discovery 2s were prone to failure, and not just failure, but catastrophic failure, often leading to them destroying other stuff on the underside of these vehicles. They're also really expensive to replace when they start to wear. The Discovery 2 was produced between 1999 and 2004, and it was an early pioneer of traction control. Now, traction control in this vehicle makes this thing awesome off-road. It really does send power to the wheel that needs it when you're articulating. It also has ABS and hill descent control, and all that's great when it works. But it goes bad frequently and often in these old Land Rover Discos. So what happens is, each of the 4 wheels has a wheel speed sensor built into the hub, and if any of those fail or they get dirty, it will throw a code called the 3 Amigos, which is traction control, ABS, and hill descent control warning lights on the dash, And essentially what that is a fault with either one of the wheel sensors or the ABS pump. The ABS pump is mind-bogglingly expensive to replace. Sometimes it's just a shuttle valve that gets a little bit stuck in the ABS pump, but overall the traction control system, when it works, is awesome, but it often goes bad, so much so there's a name for the 3 warning lights on the dash, the 3 amigos. Okay, so other stuff that goes bad way too frequently, door lock actuators are always going wrong on these old Discoveries, as are window regulators. We need to talk about this windshield as well, because I don't know if you can see that, but there are these little itty bitty lines in the windshield. That's a heating element, which is great in the winter time because it really defrosts your windshield quickly. But if you're like us in Colorado and your windshield breaks frequently, these are over $1,000 to replace, so they're super expensive. These interiors, as beautiful as they are, trim pieces are extremely expensive secondhand. And the windshield has another quirk too. This was a problem with some of the early Discovery 2s and even some of the later ones. Our neighbor had this problem where his windshield was leaking. So we brought it back to the dealer, and the dealer was like, great, we'll just replace it under warranty. So they replaced it under warranty. It still leaked. So we brought it back to the dealer and like, great, we'll replace it under warranty. So they replaced it under warranty and it still leaked. And it turns out the issue with some of these Discovery leaking windshields is that the hole for the windshield does not actually fit the glass. Speaking of other things that will most likely leak, the sunroofs go bad in these, as do the headliners. They all start to sag and wear over time. Other things that leak is just the truck itself. They leak out of the transfer case, they leak out of the engine. It's just like, in terms of holding its liquids, it doesn't do that so well. So other than the sunroofs that leak and the headliners that sag and the windshield that may or may not fit and the drive shafts that may grenade themselves and the power steering pumps that go bad every 35 minutes and the engines that are about as consistent as sun in the UK in January, these things are pretty reliable. So yeah, the reliability in these is questionable at best, and build quality is in that same boat. But I still think that these old Land Rover Discovery 2s are some of the coolest trucks on the road today. Let me show you why. First off, I think that this design is just incredible. It has to be one of the best looking SUVs anywhere. Now this is a 2004, so this is the post-facelifted Discovery 2. They facelifted it in 2003. What they did is they essentially gave it these headlights to match the new design of the Range Rovers. And honestly guys, I think it still looks pretty good even, 14 years later, it still looks pretty modern. It's got this magical quality of being extremely butch and extremely aggressive and ready to take on the world, but also extremely elegant and refined and sophisticated. Take, for example, these arrow straight body lines. It's just so cohesive to the rest of the design of the vehicle. Everything is squared off, yet weirdly elegant and sophisticated at the same time. And look at these. These are Alpine windows. So these are actually above the standard rear quarter glass, and they really provide so much light into the cabin. The visibility in these old Land Rovers is just absolutely incredible, as is the stadium seating. So you can see there's a bump in the roofline here, and that's because the rear seat occupants sit significantly higher than the front seat occupants, which means they've got a great command view of the road. So this model right here is just an SE, which is kind of a run-of-the-mill trim for these old Land Rovers. Depending on the year, it typically went SD, SE, and then HSE was the top of the line, but all of them are super, super luxurious. Let me open up the door. I mean, we've got leather everywhere. These seats are incredibly comfortable. The dash is trimmed in leather. There's wood paneling throughout. The steering wheel is leather. The seats are heated. It's got automatic climate control. It's got 4 power windows. It's just so well equipped for 2004, and it still is extraordinarily comfortable today. Another cool feature is this rear glass that has this kink in it to allow for the most visibility possible and accommodate for this rear gate mounted spare tire. By the way, anytime you have a rear gate mounted spare tire, it's instantly cooler. These of course swing out and reveal a ton of space, not only left and right, but also up and down. You can see too, if we had the rear jump seats back here, we have air vents for the 3rd row. Depending on which trim, you could get a 3rd row set of jump seats. And you can see what I mean by the stadium seating back here. Look how much taller the 2nd row is than the 1st row. It just completely steps down, and it makes riding in the back of a Land Rover that much more fun. Stepping into the back seat, the story is much the same. A lot of room, just a ton of headroom back here, and it's just covered in this opulent tan leather with this black piping along the seats. I mean, just look how good they are visually. We also have AC controls and vents pointed directly at your face, so you always have tons and tons of air blowing directly at you. These nets up here are cool, good for storage, and we even have a rear sunroof back here. Now in modern vehicles, these rear sunroofs are just there, you know, to provide light, but in these old Land Rovers, they actually open. I think it's really hard to understand the appeal of these Land Rovers unless you've driven one, because it's almost an indescribable experience. It's not like any other SUV, primarily because of the seating position. And I don't care if you've got a Tahoe that's lifted 14 inches and it's got, you know, 48-inch tires. The driving and seating position in a Discovery is unlike anything else. It's exactly what you don't want in a sports car. You completely sit on top of it. The steering wheel is right up in your face, and it looks like you're looking down on the world, and that's not what you want in like a 911 or Miata. You want to be in the thing and low slung, but in an off-roader and even a daily driver, it's such a satisfying experience because you can see the world. And with these thin A and B pillars and all this glass, those Alpine windows, there's so much visibility. There's also a lot of heat in the summer because it's just like a greenhouse in here, so you have to kind of put up some shades, but it really is an amazing place to be. It also drives very nice. As much as I bad talked this engine earlier, maybe a little bit undeservedly so, because there have been thousands and thousands of these engines produced, it's very smooth and it's very quiet, and the whole truck kind of isolates you from the outside world. It's like you're in your own little luxury cubby. So one of the things you notice about stepping into the cabin are just how thin these doors are, and look how thin these pillars are. It means you have a ton of visibility. It also means I probably wouldn't want to get into a rollover accident. Obviously the airbag is looking a little bit old. It's not super sophisticated. We have horn buttons and steering wheel controls here. But, you know, just take a look at this design. Oh, there are three amigos. Good to see you guys. It's nice and flat, nice and square. It's just very well thought out in here. Obviously some stuff's a little like, I mean, it's not ideal, is it? But, you know, we have our fog light controls up here on the console. The steering wheel is super thick. I also like how it's wrapped in tan. Here is our hill descent control button. These are additional fog lights for the aftermarket lights on top. Old school cassette player in this one. The sound system in these, if you get the Harman Kardon system, is just spectacular. This is the Discovery 2, so we have cup holders here, simple shift pattern, and then interestingly enough, the window controls are here in the center. They're not on the doors, with our lockouts and our heated seats. Once again though, like, I mean, talk about quality, like everything is a little bit hokey in here. The wood is nice, the dash is nice. Some funny stuff about the climate control. It's automatic climate, as we talked about earlier, but to see the external temperature, you have to push the external button. These armrests are a staple of Land Rover today, and they have been for quite a long time. They're adjustable, so you can spin this little lever and get in position exactly where you want. We have these cool little pockets up here above the sun visors for additional storage. Sunroof controls here. There's no thick shade in these old Land Rovers. It's these fun little nets. I think they make you feel like you're always on safari. That's kind of the vibe you get when driving these. You're always going out on an adventure, be it an adventure to the repair shop or an adventure down to the tip of South Africa. It's always an adventure. Another really nice touch right here, where it's nice to put your arm and just cruise along. There's this really cool suede soft touch material that's just super comfortable to rest your arm on, and just tons and tons of storage pockets throughout this truck. Now you might be surprised to know that even in 04, this Land Rover had solid axles front and back. It was the last Land Rover or Range Rover product to incorporate solid axles, which means it's really good off-road. It's got a lot of articulation, it's good at rock crawling. But the thing is, you think of solid axles, you think of Wranglers and CJs, which are rough and tumble on the road. But even with this 3-inch lift and these big tires on this Land Rover, it's really, really, really comfortable on the road. These seats are pretty cushy. I like these handles. I think they look cool. The brakes are a little bit mushy, and the engine doesn't have a lot of power, and the steering isn't precise, and the transmission is slow. But if you don't expect, you know, a crisp, sporty driving experience, if you expect to be wafted along across any kind of terrain, the Land Rover Discovery is perfect. Now, something you may not know about the old Land Rover Discovery 2 is that you're always in four-wheel drive, so there's no way to select two-wheel drive. It's locked in four-wheel drive all the time, which is great if, you know, you're driving on the street and it's dry, and then all of a sudden it's wet, and then all of a sudden it's snowy, and then all of a sudden you're in a safari park in South Africa. You don't have to switch a dial or a lever, but we also have a low range and a neutral in our transfer case here. And in the last of this series of Discovery 2, they also incorporated a diff lock again, and I say again because Discovery 1's had a diff lock, and then in 04 they were like, okay, we're going to bring it back for the off-road guys, and that's what they did, and that makes this thing really good off-road. Now I'm going to say something a little bit controversial here, and I'm ready to get roasted online, so go ahead and do your worst. Please don't. I actually think these Land Rover Discovery 2s, all things considered, are more fun to drive than an equivalent 100 series Land Cruiser. Now, I'm not saying they're better vehicles, I'm not saying they're better made, because I think that would be a blatant lie to you, and I am not prepared to do that, but it's just something really special and unusual about driving this. It's the smell. They all have this really distinct British smell, if you will, and it's the visibility and it's the space. And there's something very human about a Land Rover Discovery. Humans aren't perfect, right? Humans break. Humans have to go to the doctor. Humans have their faults. We have good days and we have bad days. And as silly as this sounds, it's kind of the same thing with a Land Rover Discovery. It's amazing on some days. You want to rip your hair out on other days, and it's just very natural. And I don't think you necessarily get that in a Land Cruiser, because it's incredibly well made, but it just feels like a machine. And in the machine, it'll always work. And I'm sure, yeah, you're going to comment, well, of course, I want my machine to work. Yeah. But emotionally, I think it's easier to get more invested in a Discovery, and that's why people are willing to put the thousands of dollars of maintenance in to keep them running. You kind of get out of a Discovery what you put into it, because yeah, it'll break. But if you stay up on the maintenance and you take care of it and you treat it well, and you know, you use it as it's meant to be used, it's going to be a great ownership experience. At least it has been for us. We have 147,000 miles on this. We've only had it for a couple months now, but you know, we've had to put some work into it, such as a little bit of brake work, but we've really made it our own. We put the roof tent on it and the lights on it, and my dad and I have had some great adventures in it, and it's always been exciting because, you know, are we going to make it back from our trail today? I don't know, with the Land Rover thing. And the plan is to, you know, really take care of it, but just kind of drive it till it explodes, till that old 4.6 bites the dust, and then go from there. And I think that's how you kind of have to live your life in a Land Rover Discovery, is, you know, enjoy the heck out of it while it's running, and then fix it when it's not, and just keep enjoying the heck out of it. And that's why I think these things are so cool, because they make you feel special. It always feels like you're on a South African safari, even if you're like me right now going to the gas station, which you have to do a lot. You're excited to drive it. You smile when you look at it because it looks so tough. It really is an ownership experience like none else. It's cool, but it's also crap. As always, I'm Tommy with The Fast Lane. We'll see you guys next time right here. Thanks for watching.